Is Catalonia's quest to break away from Spain finally over? In 2017, the world watched as Catalan leaders declared independence. However, within days it had failed. The Spanish government was back in control and the ringleaders had fled. Since then, support for statehood appears to have dropped dramatically. But some suggest that the campaign, while weakened, certainly hasn't been defeated. So, where exactly does Catalonia's independence movement now stand? Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is James Ker-Lindsay and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, security and statehood. Around the world, many territories are trying to break away and form independent sovereign states. However, remarkably few ever succeed. Notwithstanding the flurry of new countries created following the collapse of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia at the end of the Cold War, almost no new countries have been formed in the past 30 years. Indeed, it's been almost a decade and a half since the United Nations last welcomed a new member, South Sudan, in 2011, the longest gap in the organisation's history. But of all the major independence campaigns since then, few have attracted as much attention as Catalonia's ill-fated attempt to break away from Spain in 2017. Having challenged the Spanish government, the world watched as its leaders announced the creation of a new Catalan republic. But instead of leading to the world's newest country, the effort quickly collapsed. But just what exactly has happened to support for independence since then? The autonomous community of Catalonia is one of 19 territories comprising the Kingdom of Spain. Lying in the northeast corner of the Iberian Peninsula, to its north is France and to its east is the Mediterranean Sea. To its south and west are the Spanish provinces of Valencia and Aragon. The population currently stands at around 7.5 million, making it Spain's second most populous province. Although it's only the 10th largest geographically, it's also one of the country's wealthiest regions. Indeed, Catalonia is estimated to account for around a fifth of Spain's gross domestic product. Catalonia has a long and fascinating history. Settled by the Phoenicians and the Carthaginians in ancient times, it became part of the Roman Empire before being conquered by the Visigoths. In the 8th century, it was seized by the Arab Moors. However, its origins as a distinct political entity can be traced back to the early Middle Ages. In the 9th century, the county of Barcelona emerged within the Carolingian Empire, eventually becoming a de facto independent entity. This lasted until the end of the 12th century, when it united with the neighbouring Kingdom of Aragon, and what was now called the Principality of Catalonia enjoyed considerable autonomy. But all this began to change in 1469 when King Ferdinand II of Aragon married Queen Isabella of Castile and Leon, marking the beginning of Spanish unification. Although Catalonia initially kept control of its affairs, this was gradually eroded over the following centuries as the new Spanish kingdom strengthened and became increasingly centralised. The emergence of modern nationalism in Europe in the 19th century saw the first stirrings of a new Catalan political and cultural movement. Fed by growing industrialisation and increasing wealth, this grew in the early 20th century as various political parties and movements emerged, calling for self-rule. In 1932, Catalonia was finally granted autonomy, but it was short-lived. Just a few years later, following its victory in the Spanish Civil War, the nationalist regime led by General Franco revoked Catalonia's autonomy as part of its efforts to centralise state power and suppress regional identities. But things would begin to change again following Franco's death in 1975. 3 years later, a new constitution again decentralised power, and in 1979, Catalonia regained its autonomy. Then, in 2006, a new Statute of Autonomy was passed. In addition to defining Catalonia as a nation, it regulated the use of various national symbols, promoted the Catalan language, and extended the powers of the Catalan government. Although it now seemed that Catalonia's status had been settled, everything was upended in June 2010 when the Spanish Supreme Court ruled that elements of the 2006 law were unconstitutional. The decision sparked widespread anger and led to a massive demonstration attended by over 1 million people. This was followed 2 years later, on the 11th of September 2012, Catalonia's National Day, by another enormous protest. By now, popular sentiment seems to be moving towards statehood. As a result, the Catalan government announced plans to hold a referendum on the matter. But while opinion polls consistently showed that many more Catalans wanted the chance for a democratic vote on independence than actually wanted to see the area break away, the Spanish government nevertheless refused to even discuss the idea of a vote. Faced with this, the Catalan government changed course slightly. Instead of a formal referendum, in November 2014, it held a non-binding poll. This showed that of the 42% who participated, 81% wanted Catalonia to become a fully independent country. This paved the way for the next steps. Following another victory for pro-independence forces in regional elections in 2015, the Catalan administration decided to hold a full-blown referendum on the 1st of October 2017. But although Spain bitterly objected, sending in police to stop the proceedings, the vote nevertheless went ahead. This time, 92% voted for independence on a 43% turnout. 10 days later, on the 10th of October, the President of Catalonia, Carles Puigdemont, declared that Catalonia was independent. However, while the declaration was immediately suspended to allow negotiations with Spain, Madrid refused to talk. By now, Catalonia's leaders had manoeuvred themselves into a corner where they were left with no option but either to pursue an ill-fated declaration of independence or back down. On the 27th of October, the Catalan Parliament unilaterally declared independence from Spain, announcing the formation of the Republic of Catalonia. The decision to declare independence was a disaster. Any hopes of international recognition were immediately sunk as many countries, including Spain's EU partners and the United States, announced that they would only deal with the Spanish government. This meant that there was absolutely no chance of either EU or UN membership. Meanwhile, the Spanish government stepped in to end the attempted secession. Using provisions within the constitution, it immediately suspended Catalonia's autonomy and imposed direct rule. At the same time, arrest warrants were issued against Catalonia's pro-independence leaders. As a result, several of the ringleaders, including Puigdemont, fled the country. All this meant that within days, the effort to break away had collapsed. Although Catalonia's attempted secession was the most significant constitutional crisis to hit Spain since the end of Franco's dictatorship, Madrid quickly reasserted its authority. After fresh elections in December 2017, Catalonia formed a new government, albeit only after Spain blocked Puigdemont, who was still in exile, from resuming his post. Then, in October 2019, the Spanish Supreme Court handed down long jail sentences to 9 leaders of the attempted secession. Meanwhile, hundreds more still face prosecution for their part in the events. All this meant that by the end of 2022, 5 years after the ill-fated Declaration of Independence, the campaign for statehood appeared to be but a mere shadow of its former self. For a start, the movement was fractured. Aside from the differences between the main pro-independence parties, there was also a disconnect between politicians who wanted negotiations with Madrid and activists who believed that this was impossible and still wanted to pursue direct action. At the same time, many ordinary Catalans seemed disillusioned with the whole effort. As people gathered for the annual 11th of September rally, the numbers were a fraction of what they'd been a decade earlier. But if there was any ray of hope, it came after Spanish national elections in 2023. Having already pardoned those jailed for 2017 as a gesture of national reconciliation, the ruling Socialist Party, led by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, failed to win a majority in the Spanish general election. As a result, he struck a deal with the Catalan parties, offering an amnesty to others involved in the Declaration of Independence. However, while many in Catalonia believed that this would eventually open the way for an independence vote, Prime Minister Sanchez firmly denied this. While he stated that he'd be willing to consider greater autonomy for Catalonia, albeit alongside steps to strengthen Spanish national unity, he categorically ruled out any discussions on a referendum. Since then, the independence movement seems to have declined further. In May 2024, Catalans went to the polls for the latest regional elections. For the first time in years, parties opposed to independence won. In a result Sanchez hailed as a new era for the region, his socialists won the largest share of the vote, taking 42 of the 135 assembly seats. And even the staunchly anti-independence conservative right-wing People's Party increased its seats to 15. By contrast, pro-independence parties saw their vote share fall to 42% from a high of 49% in 2017. This was then repeated just weeks later in European parliamentary elections, when the Socialists also won against pro-independence parties. Meanwhile, recent polls suggest that support for independence has fallen significantly, although many would still like a vote on the issue. So, is the quest for independence now over? On the one hand, it would appear so. Support for statehood is clearly dropping, and there's little sign that the Spanish government will give up on its refusal to discuss the matter. Then again, with around a third to 2/5 of voters still favouring the idea, it would be wrong to suggest that independence has moved to the margins of political debate. Even if the political ground favours those who want to remain part of Spain, the idea of an independent Catalan state still attracts considerable popular support, far more than most other separatist movements. More to the point, in the longer term, many of the underlying factors that initially drove the quest for independence remain intact, not least of all the Spanish government's refusal to discuss the issue, let alone allow a democratic vote on statehood. This will only continue to feed much of the resentment that led to the problem in the first place. Add to this the strong sense of regional identity underpinned by history and culture, and one gets the feeling that while Catalan independence may currently be out of favour, it certainly hasn't been defeated. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find interesting. And if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing or giving the video a like. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.